Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Ryan Buck, and in this tutorial we will be going over the design staff hour estimation forms for tab 25, landscape analysis. As you can see, this is the new version of the landscape analysis staff hour form. It was updated in September of 2023, and this is our new calculated version. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how it works. As you can see, it's got some information you enter in up top. It's very similar to how the old forms were. Off to the right, you have how to use this form. Here's a link to a library of video tutorials. This one will be included in that library, as well as some instructions below on how to use the form, which I'll be going over in this video tutorial. My contact information is down here at the bottom right. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on how to use these forms. If you find any issues with the forms, again, I'm here for any technical support. So with that, let's dive in and see how we use this particular form, tab 25. The first thing we're going to do in this new calculator version of the form is we're going to enter in project parameters, and those would either be units, such as the length of the project, the area of the project, the quantities of the project. So we're going to tell the spreadsheet a little bit about the project based on the scope, as well as establish a complexity of the project. So you'll have two types of complexities. You'll have project complexity or task complexity. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Once you enter in the project parameters, the spreadsheet will estimate a calculated value of staff hours for what you told it based on the parameters and complexity of that project. And this calculated number is based on established guidelines that are printed in an Excel file on the Scope and Staff Hours website. Again, you can always reference those guidelines on that website for more information while you're filling out these forms. That calculated value of staff hours is a recommended starting point to start negotiations between the department and the consultant. The department and the consultant will have to determine if the calculated hours are appropriate for their specific project, or if they are too low, they can recommend increasing the hours for that task in the effort, or maybe it is high for that project and they can recommend reducing and negotiate from there. And that there are columns for the department to enter in their estimate, the consultant can enter in their recommended hour estimate, and then there's a column for the final negotiated. You can compare and contrast the department consultants and get to your final. There's also a documentation column to leave any documentation, as always, as to how you came up with the hours that you negotiated. So with that being said, we're going to go line item by line item in this video tutorial and talk about it and how to use it. So the first thing is anything that is in red font is intended for user input, or a red shaded box intended for user input. Black font would be either text or it's a calculated value that's not meant to be edited. So we're going to start entering in our parameters. So for example, 25.1 is data collection. The description is lump sum. It's a lump sum value. So is data collection required is what it asks you in your pop-up box when you select this box. And 1 is equal to yes, and no is equal to 0. So if you're doing data collection and you have it on this project, you would enter in 1. Oh, I did skip a step. I'm sorry. The first thing you need to do is, what is the complexity of the planting plan, or and so you would see the landscape guidelines to determine this. The landscape guidelines are right here down here to the left of tab 25. And if you click that, you can determine what is the complexity of the landscape plans. So the landscape guidelines, we have this new very nice matrix to determine what the overall complexity is. And you fill it out just like this. You read the planting palette, and it gives you some definitions. Is it simple, standard, or complex for the project? So, for example, we'll say that it has a drop down, it's standard, right? And so then we go and so on and so forth. What's the roadway type? Is it an existing roadway? Is it widening? Reconstruction? We'll say that it's a widening project. You kind of fill out this matrix. The roadway elements, simple, minor intersections, standard, intersection and interchanges. We'll say that it is simple. Roadway location. So this uses context classifications right here. We'll say that we are in a standard. All right. Stakeholder participation. So number of stakeholders right here. We'll say that there's a lot of stakeholders for this project. Public workshop. Complex, right? 3. Outdoor advertising. So is there any outdoor advertising? We'll say in A, there's no outdoor advertising. And as you can see, it totals up a sum of 10 points, and it recommends that we have a mid complexity. And again, you can see the point total, we kind of fall into mid. You can agree with that or disagree with it, but it's just a tool to help you kind of determine the complexity of the planting plan. Then you'll go back to tab 25, and we had a mid, so we can drop down this red box right here and select mid. It will fill in all the tasks that rely on the mid-level complexity planting plan, as you can see. Now, some of the boxes didn't fill, and I'll get to those. Those are based on task complexity. For example, 25.1, like I started, you'd enter in yes, and this is not based on the complexity of the planning plan. It's based on the complexity of the data collection. So what is the complexity of the data collection for the project? And you would select simple, rural corridors, limited, let's say standard, which is isolated, or short urban corridors, or long urban corridors. We'll put ourselves in the standard. So this is task complexity, which can be different than your planning plan or your project complexity. All right. 25.2, outdoor advertising assessment. Again, estimated number of outdoor advertising signs. So we'll say we have 0 on this project, but if you did, you would put in 2 or however many to analyze. And I'm going to leave it for 0 because this project we don't have any in this example. So it'll recommend 0 hours. 25.3 is your master design file setup. So these are your base files. And this is it required? We'll say yes. And this is based on task complexity. What's the complexity of the setup of the design file, your base files? Is it complete and current CAD files available, partial CAD files, or no usable CAD files available? In this example, we'll say that we have some available. All right, 25.4, site inventory and analysis. All right, so in the site inventory analysis, it's broken up into 2 sections. You can either use length or area, and you can see when you have multiple couple decimal points showing the unit is either going to be length or area, and so in this case, it's asking for the length of the project where site inventory and analysis are to occur in miles, or the estimated total area in acres is the area, right, for area projects. Include all area within the project limits and do not deduct any unplannable areas. So, for a corridor project, you would put in length. For an area project, such as a rest area or interchange, you would put in the area. We'll say that we just have a corridor, and we're not doing any area for this example. All right. 25.5, same thing, the landscape opportunity plan. It's broken up into 2 things, mainline length, so length or an area project. So in this case, we'll do the length of the project where a landscape opportunity plan is developed. Go along with this. Now this uses task complexity, so what's the complexity of the landscape opportunity plan? We'll say it's standard. Again, if you had an area project, you would enter in the number of acres, right, to be developed and the complexity of that. We'll leave it at 0 for this example. 25.6, the conceptual planting design. So we've got your report preparation. So is the planting report required? 1 or 0, yes or no. And it uses mid for the planting plant complexity. Then we have your conceptual planting design, mainline length. Again, we'll stick with 2.5 miles of corridor and no area. All right. 25.7 is the final planting design. Same thing. Enter in that area. All right. 25.8 is conceptual irrigation design. So we've got our feasibility report, yes or no, 1 or 0. Then we're going to do our complexity of our irrigation design. We'll say that it is simple for this case. And we'll actually say that let's just say we're irrigating only half of the corridor, not the whole thing. We can put that length in there as well. And it could be simple as well. All right. We don't have any area. In this area project, so you would just enter in the number of interchanges or intersections or rest areas or toll plazas receiving irrigation. You can have corridor and area too. That is possible on projects too. So you could do the length of the main line, and then you could do an area as well. But in this case, you're not doing acreage, you're just doing the number of intersections or interchanges or rest areas or toll plazas. All right. And again, let's say you have 2 intersections. We'll keep with simple irrigation right there. All right. 25.9, final irrigation design. So we got our main line, just doing half a mile, that's simple. And then our area projects, I'm just going to input some stuff just kind of show you how it works. And that's how you get the calculated version. So you need to put the units in as well as also define what the complexity is to get an initial estimate and then determine if that's appropriate or not. All right, 25.10, conceptual hardscape design. So you've got your report preparation. Is the report required? Yes or no? And we need the complexity of the hardscape. And then we've got our lump sum. Is a hardscape concept design required? Yes or no? All right. 25.11 is the final hardscape design. We'll say we have final hardscape and standard complexity. All right. 25.12 is your landscape quantities for the EQ report. So if you're doing quantities for the EQ report, you'd say yes with the 1, and it will calculate it using the mid based on the planting complexity. 25.13 is the cost estimate. So this is the estimated number of engineering estimate submittals required. We'll say we have 4 submittals. And then you also have your LRE updates. So the number of LRE updates, typically a phase 2. All right. 25.14 is your TSPs or MSPs. Just enter in the number. There's no complexity associated with that. Looks like 6 hours per the guidelines. And we'd have to determine if that's appropriate. 25.15 is any other landscape services that are not included in the guidelines and forms. There's no units or complexity to enter in. They're all based on case-by-case negotiations as they're not established in the guidelines. So you can document what you're adding in here, and then you would enter in the number of hours recommended in this calculated version, so it'll sum up. But you can also put it in the departments or the final negotiated columns as well. And that'll sum up your technical subtotal as an estimate. Then you'll go into your non-technical items of QA, QC, and supervision. They can be turned off. Their default on 1, yes, right? So there is a required QA, QC or supervision. If you did want to turn it off, you'd put a 0 in there and it would zero out the hours. It's going to be based on 5%, so it's going to calculate 5% of each of these right here across the board. You do not have to use 5%. If you wanted to use another percentage, you would document it over here, 7%, 3%, and then you'd have to manually calculate it, and you would enter it into this cell, J, right here in the negotiated, the number of staff hours that you recommend to be given for QA/QC and supervision. Also, 2518 is the landscape meetings. This is used based on the table below for technical meetings. This works by entering in the number of meetings that you have. So if you had let's just say we had a kickoff meeting, we had a couple meetings with some local agencies, one meeting with the utility owners, and then we had one other meeting. As you can see, it tabulates 5 meetings, and this number carries up to the number of meetings. It's going to recommend 2 hours per meeting per the guidelines. Again, just know that you can adjust that if necessary. If you have one maybe 8-hour meeting or a bunch of half-hour meetings, maybe you need to adjust the hours, and you would input them right here to be a little more accurate. But that's how it sums up the meetings. There's also a column for travel time to the meetings. Let's just say you needed to travel 2 hours for the kickoff meeting and an hour for the local agency meetings. That will sum up right here to 3 hours, and it carries up for travel time, for meeting travel time right there. Then we've got field reviews, 25.19. This is a new table down here for your number of field reviews. In this case, you would put the number of staff that attends on the field reviews. So let's say there's 2 staff. And then you'd also have your site time per staff. Let's say there's 4 hours that both staff traveled to the site, spent 4 hours there. So that's 8 hours, and it took an hour each to travel there, so that's 10 total hours, and that carries up right here to the calculated value. All right, then you have 2520, which is coordination. Again, it works very similar to the QA/QC and supervision. It's going to be on as default. It's going to recommend 3% for all of these. If you wanted to use 2% or something else, you could. You would put it in the documentation, manually calculate it, and input the staff hours right here. This will all sum up, and this will carry over to your summary sheet for distribution. Again, my name's Ryan Buck. Here's my contact information. Please reach out if you got any questions or concerns, have any suggestions on how we can improve this to make it better for you. Thanks again for watching this video tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it.